Have you ever been camping alone in a forest and felt like you were not alone? Welcome to a tale of the unexpected, a story that unfolds in the heart of nature's solitude. Picture a man who, in search of tranquility, ventures alone into the dense, all-encompassing forest. He finds a perfect spot, nestled between towering trees, where he sets up his temporary home. A small tent, a crackling fire, the bare necessities of a solitary camper. The daylight hours are filled with peace and serenity as he savors the solitude, the only sounds being the whispering wind and the chirping of distant birds. But as the sun dips below the horizon, the forest begins to transform. The chirping birds are replaced by the rustling of leaves and the snapping of twigs. It's just wildlife, he reassures himself. Yet an uneasiness begins to settle in. The fire flickers, casting long, dancing shadows that play tricks on his mind. The rustling grows louder, the snapping more frequent. Is it just his imagination playing tricks on him? Suddenly a chilling howl pierces the silence, echoing through the trees, bouncing off unseen walls. It's not a sound he can easily identify, not a fox nor a wolf. It's a sound that sends a shiver down his spine, prickles the hairs on the back of his neck. The once comforting solitude now feels oppressive, the silence of the forest replaced by the clamor of his own racing heartbeat. The man is alone, but suddenly he realizes the forest is alive with unseen beings. He feels watched, followed, hunted. His fire, once a beacon of comfort, now feels like a spotlight, highlighting his presence to all who lurk in the shadows. The forest, once a place of peace, is now a stage for the unknown, for the unseen, for the fears that awaken in the heart of the night. And so, he sits there, heart pounding, eyes straining in the darkness, the once comforting crackle of the fire now a grim reminder of his solitude. He was alone. But he was not alone in the forest. Have you ever seen shadows moving among the trees where there was no one to cast them? You see, on one unforgettable night, a group of friends found themselves in such a chilling predicament. They had set out for a fun-filled camping trip, their spirits high, their laughter echoing through the forest. This was a well-trodden campsite, a place where many had gathered around the fire to share stories and songs. But that night, something was different. Something was off. As the fire crackled and the moon hung high, casting an eerie glow on the trees, they saw it. Shadows moving where there should have been none. At first, they tried to brush it off, to convince themselves it was nothing more than tricks played by the flickering firelight. They laughed, perhaps a bit too loudly, a bit too nervously. But the laughter soon died on their lips as the shadows crept closer, defying all logic and reason. They huddled closer to the fire, their eyes wide and their hearts pounding. The forest, once filled with the comforting sounds of crickets and rustling leaves, now seemed eerily silent. All they could hear was the crackling of the fire and their own ragged breathing. The shadows danced among the trees, darting in and out of sight, as if playing a cruel game of hide and seek. Their night of fun and camaraderie had turned into a night of fear and uncertainty. The shadows seemed to surround them, closing in on their campsite. The once familiar forest had turned into a labyrinth of darkness and moving shadows. They were trapped, watched over by unseen eyes, their every move shadowed by these mysterious figures. As the fire dwindled and the night deepened, they sat in a tense silence, their gazes locked on the dancing shadows. They were surrounded, but they couldn't see who or what was watching them. The forest had turned into a stage for these spectral silhouettes, leaving the friends as unwilling spectators to a terrifying performance. Their night in the forest was far from over, and they could only guess what the shadows among the trees had in store for them. Have you ever heard the wind whisper your name when you were miles away from anyone who knew it? A peculiar question, isn't it? Yet, for one woman, it was a chilling reality. She was an adventurer at heart, a seeker of solitude and serenity who decided to go backpacking in a remote mountain range. She yearned for the quiet, the solitude, the communion with nature, away from the incessant chatter and clatter of civilization. Miles away from the nearest human dwelling, she found her sanctuary. There it was just her and the elements, a lone human being under the vast sky, her only company the whispering wind. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of red and gold as she settled into her tent for the night. The nocturnal symphony of the wilderness lulled her into a peaceful slumber. But then, something strange happened. As she was teetering on the edge of sleep and wakefulness, she heard it. A whisper, soft and low, carried on the wind. It was her name. At first she dismissed it as a trick of her tired mind, a figment of her imagination. But then, it happened again, and again. Each time the whisper grew louder, more insistent, echoing in the silent night. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind raced with 1,000 questions. How could this be? She was alone, in the middle of nowhere, miles away from anyone who knew her name. Yet the wind knew. It whispered her name, a ghostly voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. She lay there, wide awake, listening to the whispering wind, a sense of dread creeping into her heart. Was she truly alone? Or was there something out there in the darkness, watching her, knowing her, whispering her name into the wind? Fear gripped her, but she was frozen, unable to move, unable to escape the whispering wind. She was alone, but the wind knew her name. Have you ever felt an unseen presence when you were sure there was no one around? Let's dive into our final tale for the night. Imagine this. A couple, full of excitement and love for adventure, decided to camp on a secluded beach. An idyllic day unfolded, filled with laughter, shared secrets, and the tranquil lullaby of the sea's ebb and flow. But as the sun began to bow out, surrendering the stage to the moon, the atmosphere took a sinister turn. The once comforting solitude of the beach started to feel ominous. A sense of unease crept up on them, like a predator stalking its prey. They began to feel watched, as if a pair of unseen eyes were locked onto them. The ocean's lullaby was now punctuated with the eerie crunch of footsteps in the sand. Yet every time they turned around, there was nothing but the vast expanse of the beach. Then objects began to move on their own. A cup that was carefully placed on the table was now on the ground. Their tent flaps rustled, even though the night was still. It was as if an invisible hand was playing a cruel game with them. The couple clung to each other, their hearts pounding like drums in the deafening silence of the night. The terror of the night seemed endless. Every creaking sound, every whisper of the wind, every shadow cast by the moonlight amplified their fear. They were trapped in their own nightmare, a terror that they couldn't escape from. It was a presence, an unseen presence that had them in its icy grip. The couple spent the night in a state of high alert, their eyes darting around, their ears straining for every sound. Morning couldn't come soon enough. As the dawn broke, the unseen presence seemed to have retreated, leaving behind two terrified souls, their love for adventure replaced with a chilling memory. They were alone, but something was there with them. A tale that reminds us, even in our most secluded moments, we may never be truly alone. These stories are chilling reminders of the unknown that lurks in the great outdoors. As our journey through the shadowy realm of camping nightmares comes to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on the tales we've shared. Each of these stories, from the spectral figures dancing amongst the trees, to the eerie whisperings carried by the wind, and the unsettling feeling of an unseen presence, all serve as stark reminders of the mysteries that lie beyond the comfort of our daily lives. These tales of terror aren't just about the fear of the unknown, but also about the thrill that comes with it. The thrill of venturing into the wilderness, of stepping away from the familiar and immersing oneself in the unpredictable embrace of nature. It's about the strange and captivating allure that the great outdoors holds for us, beckoning us to explore, to discover, and sometimes to fear. In the unsettling hush of the forest at night, in the ethereal glow of the moonlight filtering through the leaves, in the rustling of the wind, whispering tales of the unseen, we find not just fear, but also a strange, exhilarating fascination. It's this fascination that draws us into the wilderness, into the heart of these scary camping stories. These stories, terrifying as they may be, are an integral part of the camping experience. They are the tales that we tell around the campfire, the stories that give us goosebumps, that make our hearts race and our palms sweat. They are the stories that make us feel alive, that remind us of the thrill of adventure and the joy of exploration. So, as we leave behind the spectral shadows and the whispering winds, remember this: while the wilderness may hold mysteries and terrors unknown, it also holds the promise of adventure, of discovery, and of stories waiting to be told. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more, please like, comment, and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe for more scary camping stories. Until next time, remember, you're never truly alone in the wilderness.